So this is Baruch, and I am here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and this ring that we see down below us is a picture of the zodiac. And it's summer, fall, winter, spring, because the zodiac moves through the seasons. So we're working on the concept of astrology according to Jewish law. Let me see, there you go. That's what we're working on right now. Now let me find the place that we got to. And Yaakov is learning or working with this great rabbi, Rabbi Avraham Aveinu. It seems to be an opening, a doorway into greater things. So now we're down at the bottom of this page. Let me see if I can get this over so we can see it. And turn the book this way. He says, now we will explain this matter in another way and say that those sages who investigated of the stars and their influences are similar to our father Avraham Aveinu. Abraham was the master astrologer of his generation. He wrote the oldest book on astrology, which is called Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, which is available today in English. And the best one is the commentary of Rabbi R.A. Kaplan. Let me see, I haven't got this lined up good there. He said, and in this book, at least 3 of the book's chapters talk about astrology. So it's almost a 4,000-year-old book. A rabbi said about him, Abraham said before God, Master of the universe, I looked at my horoscope and I am not suitable to have a child. God replied, get out from your astrology. The Jews are not under the influence of the constellation. What is your reasoning? The Jupiter is in the west. I will return it and place it in the east, as we see in Isaiah 42:2, who lights up the east with righteousness, tzedek, which is Jupiter. So this is a play on words there. So we see from this story that studying the movement of the planets which speak about the fate of man and what will happen to him is kosher, because it is similar to what Abraham engaged in. And you could see this because Abraham, our father, said, I looked and I saw that I couldn't have children, which are the words of an astrologer, words of the fate of man. And nobody can say about Avraham Aveinu, who God said about him, since Abraham listened to my voice and guarded my commandments in Torah, that this is 4,000 years ago, that he would engage in anything that was untrue and sinful. Rather, we have to say that anything that one engages in, which is similar to what Avraham Aveinu did, cannot have anything wrong with it. So we can say concerning astrology that there is no stigma to it, and we can say about the Chaldeans, if they are similar to the words of the wise astrologers, then there is no stigma attached from the fact that they are similar. So basically what he's saying is that the science, or what we understand of astrology, in its details and its technique, that could be very similar to a lot of other things. Let me get a little drink here. And he's making a bold statement. He's saying that if someone from another religion says something which happens to be factual, it's still factual, even though that it doesn't fit in, say, to the thoughts that you want to say. This is the first thing we can say from this story. It appears that astrology is a true knowledge, and it's proper to encourage and study it, because God said to Avraham Aveinu, leave astrology, because the Jews are not under planetary influences, once they follow the mitzvahs, that is. And he didn't say leave astrology, because he is not a science, and it is not, and let me read it again. And he didn't say leave astrology because it is not a science, and it is not true, and it's not proper to study. That's not what Hashem said at all. All of this he would have said if astrology was not a science that should be encouraged and learned. From this we can say that astrology is called a science, and its principles are true, and you should search after it and study it. Now, that's one thing that you learn from that story, he said. The third thing you could learn is that the Jews are not under the planetary influences. Now that's a different story. That is to say that the righteous ones of Israel, we're not talking about just the Jewish people who behave in ways that are not, could be better. Those who keep the commandments, etc., can nullify evil decrees by the righteous behavior and prayers. We could pray. This isn't the case of the rest of the nations of the world, of which it was said about them in the Talmud that Rabbi Yonasan said, how do we know the Jews are not under the planetary influences? Because God says, don't learn from the ways of the non-Jews. And also from the signs of heaven, do not be afraid if the non-Jew is afraid. So listen to this again. Let me read it again. Because God said, don't learn from the ways of the non-Jews. What's the ways of the non-Jews? And also, he says, also about the signs of heaven. Don't be afraid if the non-Jew is afraid. So therefore, if the non-Jew is afraid because of the signs in heaven, that doesn't mean that's going to affect you. So we learn the non-Jew is afraid because, as opposed to the religious Jew, he is not using prayer and righteous behavior to overcome the planetary influences. Those who do will overcome their fate. Now, Rabbi Avraham is going to give another reason, which is much deeper, to the question of why the Jews are above the planetary influences. Furthermore, it was said that the Jews are not under the planetary influences because the whole world was created for the Jews because they accepted the Torah. If the Jews didn't accept the Torah, the whole world, the planets and the constellations, would have returned to nothingness. And the planets and constellations only exist because of the Torah and the Jews. How can they rule over the Jews? So if the purpose of all of these things is for the purpose of the Jews, then how do they become the rulers over the Jew? Who follows the ways of the Torah? Rather, the strength of the Jews and their merit, which allowed the world to exist, is greater than the powers of the stars. And as we have mentioned before, that the planetary influences come from the lowest of the five worlds known as the world of Asiya, the world of action. Now, that's the world in which we live in, which I said the Kabbalists call this the world of wheels. But the root of the influence upon Jews is from three worlds higher up, which are Yesira, Bria, and Atzilus, going all the way back to the Ein Sof Baruch, a world known as the world of Atzilut. Let's see how much we can get done here. Now, the world of emanation, also called the world of emanation, because this is the place that it's almost one with the light of the Ein Sof. So therefore, Jews through the Torah have the ability to change the planetary influences. And because of this, we say that the Jews are not under the planetary influences, because there isn't enough strength in the constellation to fulfill the decrees on Israel. Since the righteous ones of Israel are able, through their merit, to nullify the power of the constellations. Like it says, charity saves from death. A great Kabbalist, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, of the generation following that of the Vilna Gaon, he was known as a Talmud of a Talmud. In other words, these people are very, very, very modest in everything that they say and do. They say the least possible and hide themselves as much as possible. Ein Mazel Yisrael, there says that the Mazel, the concept of the planets, have no control. There's no Mazel on Jews. Astrology is discussed a lot in that book, and in particular how the Jews are above the planetary influences. Rabbi Yitzchak also brings up the example of Avraham, and how, if astrology was okay for him, it is certainly okay for us. Everyone who learns Judaism knows that Avraham and Sarah started it. At the age of 3, Avraham came to realize that there is one creator in the world, and together with his wife Sarah, they started the Jewish religion. And it is taught that both Avraham and Sarah were completely barren, and neither had any chance, even 1 in a million, to have a child. They couldn't produce children, but God made a miracle, and they had a child, Isaac, the first child, Jewish child. So Rabbi Yitzchak Haver wants to learn from this that the Jews are a special creation, who according to natural rule shouldn't have come into existence. So they were a Bria Chadasha, that is a new creation, a novel creation, something different from the rest of mankind. People created later that people created later than the beginnings of creation. So they have a special destiny, that we are a people that was created after the beginnings of creation. So they have a special destiny and a special fate. That's the Jewish people. And hopefully, one day we will come to the book of Yitzchak Isaac Haver, because it's a very, very deep book. This is Baruch Fleischman, and these are the words of Rabbi Yaakov Kronenberg, master astrologer and Kabbalist.